All right, we're live. Welcome to the Ben and Lauren Show. I'm Ben. This is Lauren. And
Hi.
here we are. We are a day late. We got really tired last night. And we had other YouTube videos we were watching, and it just got later and later. And next thing you know, we're like, we're going to bed. So,
Well, I dutifully sat down with a list
oh,
of
yeah.
things, and you sat down, you looked at it, and you're like, I don't want to talk about anything. Let's go to bed.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then we
I
got
was sitting here, she was sitting there. We're like, what do you want to talk about? I'm like, I want to talk about bed.
then we got into bed, and you started watching Dustin and Cassie's
Yep.
show.
Yeah.
And We Tree Bonsai wanted to know, don't any of us keep normal hours? And
No.
I was like, I'm going to sleep. I don't know what the
Well, this
rest
is
of you
another
want
late
to do.
one, isn't it? It's like,
Not quite as late as last night. It was 1 o'clock.
so we were watching our favorites tonight. It's the homeschooling Torah conference, Doorkeepers.
Doorkeepers, yep.
So we watched a couple of those, and then Zach did the podcast,
From American
American
Homestead.
Homestead, and then he did the bonus reel with the sheep, and then we prepared for this, and here we are. And now it's what, 11:30.
Well, in the meantime, I read our kids several novels
Mm-hmm.
and talked to my mom on
Several
the
novels. She's exaggerating.
Well, I tell them to go pick out a story, and they come back with the thickest book they can find.
So, so that's our typical evening. Well, no, Sundays are kind of unique. Usually we go to her family's house
We
on Sunday
haven't for
night.
months.
We've had some illnesses going through the houses, so.
We were relieved to escape the last round because we squeezed in a visit to my family in the 2 days between when they got one thing and the next thing. So we were there the night before my brother came down with what seems like it may have been a flu, a fever for days and a cough and whatever.
So we made a surprise visit.
Yeah, we were there the night before, and flu is one of those things that can be contagious before you show symptoms. And so I kind of waited all week wondering, one of my kids going to come down with a fever?
No, no one did.
Well, thankfully, no.
No, everyone's good. Oh, we were happy about that. We
Yeah.
don't like sicknesses in our
Uh,
house.
and then there was the night that I was changing Elena. Elena is 2.5, and I discovered that she had some swollen lymph nodes.
Oh, yeah.
And the first thing I think, of course, is she has cancer. This is
That was
what
Wednesday, wasn't it?
Yes, this is what motherhood does to a person.
We become irrational.
Well, I looked it up, and it turns out that unless they're bigger than a certain size and they're inflamed and they're painful or whatever, I guess it's pretty normal for young children to have that.
Well, I don't know anything about anything, so Lauren's showing me this, and I can feel this bump here and this bump there, and I'm thinking, what are these things?
Well, we started feeling, and she had 3 of them that were a little bit bigger than I had felt before. And so then, of course, then I checked Daniel, and it turns out that he has a few also. So I'm thinking, from what I read, it sounds like if you've had any viruses or colds or flu in the past several months, they can get enlarged and take a while, and we have definitely had some. So, but it was good impetus to start potty training
But what
Elena.
did I tell you? I said she doesn't. Here's what we do. We take the diapers off her and put underwear on her, and we potty train her,
No more diapers.
and we just say no more diapers, because we were wondering if maybe putting the diapers on too tightly was having an effect on them.
Yeah, they're getting a little small, and we just haven't upgraded to a new size.
And she's been sort of ready to potty train for a while now, I think. And you've been working with her, what, over the past 3, 4 days now?
I think it's the 4th day.
Day 4. So give us a report. How is the potty training going? I know.
Well, we had one accident today. The first day she went through all her underwear, so you figure, I think she has like 8 pairs of underwear. Today she did really well. She was dry all night, and it's funny, our kids never are dry all night until we start potty training, and then all of a sudden magically they go all night.
Hmm.
So then a bunch of times today she would say, I have to go to the bathroom, and she'd be running into the bathroom, and she really did have to go, and she would do that before she was going, not while she was going. So she may be our fastest potty trainer. I don't think anybody else was quite that quick.
I've seen a couple trophies now.
Well, you kind of got to make a big deal in the beginning.
We do. We make a gigantic, and she's got this big grin
She
on
is
her
so
face.
happy she flaps her hands and jumps up and down and
Eminem?
smiles. And Oh yeah, and then she gets some
She gets
M&Ms.
M&Ms.
It's a big treat.
But yeah,
I kind of put off potty training her because I have this feeling we've potty trained the other two one after another in the past 2 years. So it's like when you get to the third one, you think, I just don't want to do this again.
yeah.
But she's still a good age. She's not old.
She definitely knows how the whole thing works. I mean, when she has to go, it's funny. She does the waddle.
She,
The
she walks with her legs about 3 feet apart into the bathroom. It's like, is she afraid she's gonna be wet? I
I
don't know
don't
why she
know.
does
She's
that.
dry when she does that.
I don't know. Foibles. Is really quite exciting around here right now because we have two kids learning to read, one kid who just learned how to walk and now he thinks he has to climb on everything, and one kid potty training. You know,
Daniel likes to find stools and chairs and stand up on
the
them.
table.
And then, oh yeah, he likes to climb up onto
The
the table
table.
and stand up there. And he'll look around. And if you look at him, he'll grin at you with this big smile on his face, like,
Except
look what I'm doing.
I've been trying to get him off the table all week. He's gotten
He's so proud of
in
it,
so
though.
much trouble all week over that table, and I've turned around and he's right back.
Well, he found out something surprising with the chair. He'll stand up on the chair, put his hands on the back of the chair, and start rocking it. And you know
He's
what?
like a goat. How
And
can
you
I kill myself today?
and you know what's eventually going to happen when you go on the chair and start rocking it.
Uh-huh.
Eventually, at some point, it falls over.
You know, it's a funny thing when you're teaching children. You can tell them till you're blue in the face. You can correct them. You can stop them. You can get them down. But if they're determined to tip that chair over, the only way they seem to learn is by falling on their face.
And then it's the end of the world. They just scream and cry.
And
And
you
it's like,
you hope they're not going to knock one of their teeth out or
he
something.
was okay. He's fine.
I think he bit his lip or something. It wasn't a big injury, thankfully.
So we have to tell him that's why you don't rock on the chair. But little 1-year-olds don't quite comprehend. It's like cause and effect. They don't quite make that connection.
I do feel a little like I'm living in a comedy show some days, though. It's like
We need a laugh track.
I've got one kid yelling at me from one side of the house, Mom, how do you spell chicken? And then I've got another one going, Mom, I have to go to the bathroom. And then I look over and there's Daniel standing on the table. And meanwhile, Ben's on the phone in the office
Trying to,
saying it's kind of noisy out there.
what's going on out there?
And
Oh, nothing.
I'm like, well, the breakfast dishes aren't done and now it's lunchtime. This is why we don't go anywhere during the night.
We're home all day. You want to get a hold of us?
We're home.
We're home, most likely. If we're out and about, that would be an amazing thing.
It's also why, we're watching this homeschooling conference, and I'm kind of sliding into homeschooling because, well, I think part of it is having been homeschooled myself, I don't have the same impetus to like choose a curriculum and make school come home. I'm kind of like, well, I guess I better teach the kids to read. Great. As soon as I do that, I'm going to be kicking their noses out of a book all day so they'll do something else.
I appreciate the fact that you have confidence in your curriculum and in your.
I don't have a curriculum.
That's exactly it. I feel confident because you feel confident. This is all uncharted territory for me, you know.
So I've been sort of reluctantly having to say, well, Abigail is going to be 6 tomorrow. I think I really need to get busy, and so I've been teaching her and Susanna to read.
Yep.
And that's going pretty well.
6 years old.
I got my first note from a child of ours with little hearts all over it saying, I love you, which is spelled ILUVYOO.
Well, you got to start somewhere, right?
It's my favorite note yet. It was really cute.
I love you.
I love you. Yeah.
I like the book that she made. It says book, BOOK. And then Susanna said, oh no, it's a picture book. So underneath she wrote PICHR.
Yeah, picture.
So it says book, picture, with no T. But
Yes,
you know what? That's not too bad considering that she spelled it out and put the letters on. And
and it was a collaborative effort. It
Hmm.
was authored by Susanna and Abigail.
And they took all the construction paper and they stapled one side of it, and you open it up and there's pictures of houses mostly.
A fairly elaborate story if you listen to them tell it.
Oh yeah, they'll tell you the whole story about the book picture.
Oh, that happened this week. We discovered our children have gotten hold of the iPad, learned
Oh
how to
yeah.
turn on Movie Pro, and are making documentaries.
Hmm. Oh, and they're also doing their own show.
And their own show. It's the Susanna, Abigail, and Elena show. And
They'll take the iPad into the
they lay it
bedroom and
they lay it down and you see three little heads looking down at you with wispy hair everywhere.
my favorite is when Abigail starts off. She goes, "Welcome to the Abigail, Susanna, and Elena show. I'm Abigail. That's Elena. That's Abigail." So she goes through the whole list.
So we it was sort of horrified fascination went through the list of videos of what they had documented in our house.
My favorite also are the ones where they whisper very quietly
Hmm.
because
So
they're
that
not supposed to have the iPad.
well, no, I don't think it's that. I
No?
think that you were on the phone for that one.
Oh, was it?
She said she had to be very quiet because Daddy was on the phone.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah, that's why she was whispering.
How about that?
Yeah.
Huh.
So I learned all about what our children think is worth documenting in our house.
We have a
They
couple new.
documented that the floor in the bathroom needed washing. They documented their new bunk beds. Anyway,
We got to listen to the new ones, see what they're.
we're spying on our
We
children.
can get the inside scoop on what they're thinking. Hope they don't say anything about us.
Well, then we would know what they were
I
thinking.
guess we would know.
So that was our week. As you can see, it was a very exciting week. We stayed in, it snowed.
You know, the girls like to watch this show,
Yeah, that's probably
usually
where
the
they're
next
getting
day,
this from.
but they get bored pretty fast with it.
It snowed a lot this week. We
Hmm.
just did not go anywhere, except we absolutely had to go grocery shopping. We were out of all kinds of
Oh
stuff.
yeah, that was when it was really cold and dark, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, we were going to go shopping in the afternoon, and then Dad and Mom called, and they were going to a movie, so we had to stay home and make sure the business phone got
For
answered.
business hours, yep.
And then we found out we were supposed to be getting a snowstorm
They're
starting
like,
at
we
7
definitely need
o'clock.
to get grocery shopping.
So we got out there and hustled, and we were loading everything into our trailer, our cargo bag in the
and
back of
it's
our car.
and it was freezing
It
rain.
was
It was
freezing
dark,
rain.
and we're loading all the groceries up, and the girls are complaining about being cold, and
We're like, what are we doing here? My
we're
favorite,
nuts.
my favorite was when we got everything all loaded up. We zipped the cargo bag closed. We got in the car, and the freezing rain stopped.
Yeah,
And
yep.
that was kind of it for
And
the
that was
night.
it.
There was a snowstorm.
I just remember my hands getting numb as I'm trying to zip the thing up. You know the feeling, the numb hands.
Well, not anybody who's down south. Maybe
Oh,
they don't know that feeling.
well, anyone up north knows the numb hands feeling. It's not fun.
Well, the good news is, even though you had lots of snow to shovel, you have boots this year.
Yes, I have boots and snow pants. So today, Abigail and I went out and we shoveled some snow, and I think Susanna came out too, right?
Elena.
And Elena.
Susanna was tomato steak to me because
Mm,
she was complaining and murmuring that Abigail has a birthday tomorrow and it's not fair that her birthday is not until June.
birthday envy. So Abigail and I, and yeah, it was Elena. She came out with us, and we were shoveling the snow, and Abigail says, "Dad, can you make a snow fort?" So I did. I made a big pile of snow and I stomped all around it, and then I made like a hole in the middle so you can then the steps that kind of go up to where the hole is. So it's like a turret. It's like a tower with like a turret type thing.
Meanwhile, Daniel was climbing on top of the piano so he could look out and see
Oh,
where you
was he?
were.
I didn't know
Yes.
that.
Well, first he stood at the door and cried for about 20 minutes.
I heard that.
He wanted to go outside.
So I asked Abigail about the fort, and she says, "But it needs windows, and it needs a roof,
She
and
has something a little grander in
it
mind.
needs stairs." I'm like, what are you imagining?
How much snow did you think we got here?
We didn't get enough snow to make anything quite that elaborate. Where she wanted me to make the bricks and to stack them up and to,
Wow. Oh, like in their snow book.
and make maybe 2 or 3 stories.
Oh boy.
I don't know.
Well, maybe we need to give her a bucket and tell her to get to work on the bricks.
Yeah, well,
Make enough of them, we might have a fort.
if I got up early in the morning and just started making snow bricks and started putting it together, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll see. It's just gonna melt.
So how old are you going to be tomorrow?
My birthday's tomorrow, and I used to be able to round down a little bit into my 30s, but now I'm 40, and now I'm beyond 40. I can still round down. I can't round up to
How
50.
old are you going to be
I'm
tomorrow?
turning 41 tomorrow. I was born in 1978.
You know, I realized today that I celebrated your 33rd birthday with you. That was when we first started seeing each
Yep,
other.
that's right.
You were 32 when we met,
That's right.
which
32 years
means
old.
next year it'll have been 10 years. Well, not really.
It'll be 9 years.
But I've gone 32 to 42.
32 to 42.
That does not seem like it's possible.
That's amazing. I remember that was the birthday that my mom got me a bunch of canned food, canned
To put
stuff
in the
for
church
the
pantry.
church pantry. Yeah.
Hmm.
And
We played Wii bowling.
wow, see, full circle.
Full circle.
We played Wii bowling together, and we just recently blew the dust off the Wii. And we were playing the bowling game, and the girls love it. They think it's fantastic.
It's the only video game they can play though because they aren't used to playing computer games or video games, so they have no coordination
No,
whatsoever.
no, they can't play any of the games, any other games we
It's
have.
just as well. I find that the more they're in front of any kind of electronic thing, the more I have to work on their behavior and their hearts and murmuring and all kinds of problems that
But they will watch Alpha Blocks for hours at a time if
if
we
I
let
let
them.
them,
If we let them.
they would watch anything for hours at a time if we let them. They get into a YouTube trap and they'll sit there watching people melting aluminum foil for hours if we let them.
That sounds like something I would do.
Well, probably not hours on aluminum foil.
No.
Actually, I have found that for their schoolwork, I've been showing them little videos of how things are made. They're fascinated with how things are made, so I figure, hey, this is a good opportunity to get them interested in making things.
Oh, that was something interesting today. Daniel saw his first power tool, and the
Uh,
look on his face. He's 1 year old, and I have this. It's a drill, and when I operated,
he stood there with a
he
big
just looks at it
smile.
with this big smile, and his eyes get real big, and
Like,
then
I
I go,
gotta get my hands on this
and I
thing.
and I go, zzz, and he goes,
The girls are terrified of it. They run away.
oh, but the smile on his face.
It was almost the same look he gave when he saw his first box of Legos two
Yeah,
weeks ago.
yeah, that was pretty cool.
Boys and girls really are not all that different at this age. They're just different personality wise. Like each child has a unique
There are
personality.
some differences.
But I am actually noticing that Daniel does a few things, and maybe it is just his personality. I don't
Maybe.
know if it's a boy thing or a girl thing, but all three of the girls have been terrified of the power drill.
Not Daniel.
Daniel saw that thing and it's like, where can
Ah.
I get me one of those? Yeah.
So I put his little hand over the trigger and I pushed the trigger for him, and he thought that was pretty neat. That he has no idea what to do with it, what it does,
But it's a tool and
but
he
it,
thinks it's great.
yeah, it makes a neat noise, and it's shaped just right.
So there is something in that little brain of his that is man,
Hmm.
not woman.
That's right.
And it occasionally shows itself.
Arr, arr,
Very
arr.
occasionally. Yeah, we're gonna have to get him a little red mega hat so he can be toxically masculine.
Oh boy.
We're in trouble though. He is
Yeah.
blonde and blue-eyed, and actually, with all the stuff we saw this week, it makes me a little scared to be a mother of a blonde, blue-eyed boy.
Hmm. Yeah, it is a scary thought because if things continue on this trajectory, where are we going to be in 10, 20, 30 years from now when he's trying to raise a family?
Before that, when he's a young teenager and he can look like he could be easily bullied.
Yeah.
Although he, I have a feeling, is not all that small. He is stocky and broad-shouldered and big. He's in like 75th percentile of height.
I've got this feeling I'm going to be looking up to that boy someday.
He may be the first tall turner in several generations.
Hmm. Yeah,
I think
he's built. He's got the big barrel chest,
he's built like an English bulldog. He does. He looks like a bulldog.
and he's got big hands, big feet. Yeah, he's going to be bigger than his dad.
That was the first thing you noticed when he was born, is how
Big
big his
hands.
hands were.
He has big hands. He doesn't have my hands. I have short little hands. He's got big, big hands.
The funny thing is, he looks like your dad, but I think he might be tall like my dad.
That'll be an interesting combination.
Yeah, he's interesting. Anyway, been a children episode.
Well, two parents, you got parents.
Well, it transitions us right into what we want to talk about with the Torah portion.
Yes, this Torah portion was Yitro. It's when Moses meets up with his father-in-law, priest of Midian, and then it goes into Mount Sinai, actually,
And Ten
and the
Commandments.
Ten Commandments. But what we noticed was a kind of a story behind the story and this information that isn't really detailed very clearly, having to do with Zipporah.
So this is Moses' household.
Moses' household, continuing our theme of households. So we saw something very interesting and very,
Disturbing.
disturbing.
Very disturbing.
It talks about a story about, it just mentions in passing how Moses sent away Zipporah to her household,
To her father's
to her
house.
father's house. And the Hebrew word for sent away is the Hebrew word for divorce.
And typically, if a woman was divorced, she was sent away to her father's house.
Yeah. And it was similar to Abraham, the way he sent away Hagar and Ishmael. And so we were looking at this and we're thinking, wow, that's a bit of information that we didn't exactly get in the storyline. Last time we heard about Zipporah, it was when she was calling Moses bridegroom of blood, which we
Which
don't even know what that means.
that whole situation is very tense there. You've got Zipporah. Sounds like she's despising Moses.
Kind of, yeah.
And we kind of have this impression, I'm sure, from watching movies like The Ten Commandments or Prince of Egypt, that Moses and Zipporah are very close,
Sure.
and that they're fairly young,
Mhm.
young parents. Now we know that their son Gershom is called a young son, but that could have been anything before 13. He could be 12 years old.
So they had two sons. They had Gershom and Eleazar were the two sons, right?
Moses is 80 years old
Yeah.
at this point. He's been in Midian for 40 years. We don't know when he married Zipporah, but presumably
Moses is not a young man.
presumably she was old enough to be a shepherdess at the time that he first comes to the well, 40 years earlier. So she's at least in her mid 40s at this point.
So the relationship with Moses and Zipporah is strained.
Yes.
Very strained, and it might actually be non-existent at this point.
It might actually have been that Moses divorced Zipporah.
Yeah, and sent her away from Egypt, back to her father's.
With his sons.
Yeah, back to her father's household, Jethro, with his sons, Eleazar and Gershom. And that would explain why you don't hear much about Zipporah. You don't hear anything about Zipporah or his sons while he's in Egypt with the plagues or anything like that.
You don't. And you never hear about Zipporah again.
Until.
Well, no, you never hear about her again. You do hear about Miriam and Aaron criticizing Moses.
Right, and that's the odd thing is that the whole time in the wilderness, you never hear about Zipporah, you never hear about Gershom, you never hear about Eleazar. We assume that they're there. In fact, later on we find out that they were there.
Well, the sons were anyway.
The sons were. But there's something rather funny that happens later on when there's an argument or an issue taken with Aaron and Miriam about Moses' wife, a Cushite. Zipporah is not a Cushite.
She's a Midianite.
She's a Midianite.
An Abrahamite.
Right. She's descended from Abraham, but she's not a Cushite. So this Cushite woman is a different woman.
Either that, or there's the idea that I mentioned earlier that in Song of Solomon, the woman who's the protagonist of that poem talks about, don't despise me for my skin being so dark, because I'm a shepherdess. Don't look down on me, you high women of the court.
Right.
So it sounds as if at some point in Hebrew culture, it was considered beautiful to have fair skin and not so beautiful to have dark skin. And we know Zipporah was raised in the desert
A shepherdess.
as a shepherdess.
So that's one theory. One idea is maybe the Cushite woman is in fact Zipporah.
And they're insulting her for whatever reason.
But we find it odd that there is no mention of Zipporah at any point beyond this.
It sounds as if Moses may have married another woman.
It sounds as if the Cushite woman, and then that begs the question, where did this Cushite woman come from?
Was she one of the slaves in Egypt that left with them?
She would have had to have been part of the mixed multitude in Egypt that left with the Hebrews that would have been considered one of the tribes. They were grafted into one of the tribes. She was, and they were married. It doesn't say anything about children, doesn't say anything about anything other than a
Right.
Cushite woman. And apparently Aaron and Moses were not okay with it. They had
Miriam, you mean?
Miriam,
Miriam and
Miriam
Aaron were
and
very
Aaron.
critical. So it's as if they said, well, the one weakness in Moses, he's so great, but his personal life's a mess.
It is. And then we read later on about his descendants. It's in Judges, right?
Yeah, it was Judges 18 verse 30. There's one verse that tells us what happened to Moses' family.
And I've always thought that would be an interesting study because Moses had children. This is Moses we're talking about. And we don't really hear much about him until we get into the book of Judges and we hear about Moses' grandson. This would be Jonathan, no,
His grandson, Jonathan.
Jonathan, the son of Gershom.
Gershom, his oldest son.
So it goes Moses, Gershom, and now Jonathan. And he settled in the land of Dan.
Right, so that would be across the Jordan. It would not be in Canaan.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a strange story in the book of Judges about how the tribe of Dan, when they were claiming their land, they stole an idol from a guy named Micah. And actually, he had a whole collection of teraphim and a priest that he had taken on to be his own private priest, which I wonder if that was Jonathan. The priest, the young priest, is never mentioned by name, although none of Moses' descendants should have been priests. Moses' descendants would have been Levites.
Yeah, the Levites could minister in the tabernacle, but only the sons of Aaron could be the high priest
Right.
anyway.
They were the sons of Kohath, and they would have ministered right, I think, in the inner sanctuary of the not the Holy of Holies, but they were responsible for a lot of the more sacred duties, but only Aaron's sons would have been priests.
And they would be in charge of moving the tabernacle and things like that.
But anyway, so the Danites conquer a village called Laish, and they settle there and they name it Dan. And then it says, there the Danites set up for themselves the idol that they'd stolen from Micah. And Jonathan, son of Gershom, the son of Moses, and his sons were priests for the tribe of Dan until the time of the captivity.
Dum dum dum.
They never took up their duties in the tabernacle.
They
They
were
never
idol
they
worshippers.
never even went into the land of Canaan because the Levites weren't required to fight.
So they were idol worshippers that were not even in the land. They were in the land of Dan, outside of the land. It's amazing.
One of the earliest rebellions was Moses' family.
So that means not only did Moses never enter into the land, Moses' sons never really entered into the land
We
either.
don't know what happened to Eleazar, but Gershom, his oldest son, could not raise his own son to follow the laws that Moses was given.
The laws of Moses, as it's often referred to.
This is a tragedy. And you know what? This looks like a very modern story of bad marriage and divorce and rebellion among the children.
And we're not speaking bad against Moses, the lawgiver. Um,
But
it's
this is
just
a tragedy.
it's a tragedy. It's like a hidden story that's not really spelled out in the Torah. But if you look carefully through the history, you start seeing, oh, he sent Zipporah away. And look what happened to his sons. Look what happened to Gershom. I was hoping for kind of a happy ending for Gershom, or a happy ending for,
Well, you can still hope for Eleazar.
yeah,
We don't know
we
what
don't know
happened to
what
him.
happened to Eleazar. They are Levites, you know,
Maybe Eleazar's family went on and did what they were supposed to do and blended in with the rest of the Levites, and so nothing really remarkable happened.
perhaps. Except that he could say that I'm the son of Moses, the lawgiver.
Which apparently didn't mean very much
Hmm.
as far as the family went.
Right. But what's interesting about Moses is that Moses had a very special relationship with God. There are times when he intercedes for the people in ways that most people would not. Moses is referred to as the most humble man on earth.
Yes.
So I, the issue between Zipporah and Moses must have been something that happened in between the time that they were married in Midian and the time of the burning bush.
Maybe, or the other thing is that quite often when somebody comes to a belief in God, um, married people, it can destroy marriages because you'll have one spouse who married someone who suddenly changes to be a whole different person.
Hmm.
And the spouse who didn't change cannot cope with that change. I actually have someone in my life who had something similar happen where he came to belief in God and his wife just could not. This wasn't the man she married, and she left him.
So Moses grew up in Egyptian culture, was not familiar with the God of his fathers at all,
Didn't know him.
right? I mean, he was circumcised, but he was not in an environment really where he can learn about that. Then he murders a man, flees
To
uh,
Midian.
to Midian, flees the sword of Pharaoh to Midian, lives in the land of Midian for what, 40
40
years?
years. So
That's a
now he's 80
long
years
time.
old. He spent his whole life not knowing who in the world God is, not knowing anything about what God's
So,
ways are.
so when he married Zipporah, he was
An idolater,
an
more or less.
idolater. He was a murderer who was fleeing Egypt. But something happened, perhaps, and we don't know for sure, but something happened after he spoke with God at the burning bush.
Well, you know that he said that he couldn't speak to Pharaoh because he was a man of stumbling lips,
Hmm.
and that there's no way he could be this kind of man. And now, next thing you know, he's confronting Pharaoh in his palace. It's like the difference between Peter before he was given the Holy Spirit and after the Holy Spirit.
So perhaps that has something to do with the relationship between Moses and Zipporah.
Was he a henpecked husband? Did she used to boss him
I
around?
don't know. Who knows? I mean, again, this is not to disparage Zipporah. We're just trying
Whoa,
to,
what in the world
what
happened here?
happened? We're just trying to figure out what happened. But if I were to imagine it, Zipporah and Moses were married under certain circumstances in a certain environment, and all of a sudden Moses says, "We're going back to Egypt. I'm going to go back to my people, the Hebrews." And from Zipporah's point of view, it's like, but you're practically a Midianite. And if not a Midianite, you're
What do
an
you
Egyptian.
what do you mean we're
What
leaving?
do you mean Hebrews? What do you mean God of your fathers? What are you talking about?
She must have thought he was crazy.
So I think it may have been a cultural clash. It may have been a religious clash. It may have it's something happened to cause the relationship to really be damaged.
And I'm not totally sure what we take away from this other than the fact that you can be deep into a relationship with God and you can be the humblest man on earth and you have no clue how to raise your children and no clue how to keep your marriage together. So to ask God for a strong marriage and for children that follow him is an extraordinary request that not even Moses was able to achieve.
So when we pray for our family, for our relationship, for raising our children, we have to do better than Moses.
We have to recognize what we're asking for and know that God can give it, but recognize what we're asking for and the dangers that come with trying to keep a marriage together
Hmm.
and raise godly children.
Right.
You can't take it for granted.
You know, when I heard the list of all of the people that we would have to exceed in raising children, you don't want to raise children like Eli did.
You don't want to raise children like Jacob did.
You don't want to raise children even there's even issues in Abraham's family and Isaac.
Abraham's family, Isaac's family, Jacob's family, Noah's family, Adam and Eve's family, David's family. Samuel could not raise good
The
sons.
great Samuel, the prophet.
Samuel could not raise good sons. Who else
I was
have we
thinking
come
about
up with the
Eli.
list? Well, yeah, Eli. Solomon clearly did not do that well.
Solomon had problems.
You've got Hezekiah, the great king who follows God with all his heart, gives birth to Manasseh.
Hmm.
Manasseh, one of the most evil kings of Israel, of Judah, I mean, except he is one of the ones the only one that
That
repented.
repented.
But
Yeah.
still, I mean,
Hezekiah is one of the most highly regarded kings, and he has a son, Manasseh, who's
evil,
known as
evil,
one of the
evil.
most wicked kings.
Sacrificed one of his children.
So, what a challenge. What a challenge we have before us. You know, we have to do better than all these great people of faith in the Bible.
The truth is, we can't do better.
No.
No, because what exactly do we have that any of those men didn't have. The only difference would be to ask God for the provision for things to be different.
We said in our marriage vows, in our marriage ceremony, that what God wants from us is godly offspring. And we're told to teach our children when they rise up in the morning, when they lay down in bed, as we walk along the road. And that's what we as parents must do, so that as they grow up, they will not depart from the wisdom that we give them.
Right.
And it's not wisdom that from us, it's wisdom from above. It's wisdom from God. And anything that we do of ourselves, we can't rely on that. You know,
Right.
I spent so many years of my life learning how to play video games, and boy, would I love to just pass that skill and that wonderful talent onto my children as a legacy. But that's not going to help.
Well, I've got my own things that I.
Pass your Star Wars trivia knowledge on to.
Oh yeah, come on. I haven't even watched the last three Star Wars movies that were made.
See, that's a life-changing. Marriage is a life-changing event.
And the funny thing is, I don't even care. I don't even care. I'm too busy. I've got too many other more important things to do. I'm trying to do better than Moses. Oh my goodness. And this video is 36 minutes long.
All right, well, I think at this point we should probably say good
Good
night.
night.
If anybody is still with us, then thank you for sticking it all the way through to 36 minutes and 28 seconds. That's amazing. Good job. Thumbs up for you. You get a thumbs up. See it? All right. I'm going to say good night, and good night, Lauren.
Good night, Ben.